to a amazing episode with my long lost friend, Eric Nickoli. Eric, it's great to have you. Eric is with BraveCo, braveco.org if you want to check them out. But Eric, it's great to have you, man.
Cartwright, so good to see you, man. You just got married too. That's
yeah.
Fun journeying that journey with you for a couple of years. So congrats.
I mean, I felt like there was a span of 5 years. I would see you probably like once a year, and you would ask me, "So are you married yet?"
I found that the pressure really helps that year.
Yes. And then Katie would come, your wife would come right behind you and go, and she would do the same thing. And I'm like, guys, chill, please.
The better way to say it is you're phenomenal. We think you're quite the marrying type. So it's a vote of confidence.
Yes. And I had to process that. So I took it as a compliment. It just may not at first, right?
Well, you landed a good one.
I did. I'm very thankful for my wife. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I'm finding that 6 weeks in, I'm sure you have 12 years of finding new things about your wife, 12 years in.
Have you ever seen a kid learning to ride a bike? Yeah. And like the wheel does this. But then eventually they figured like, that's where we are in our marriage. It's like, yeah, those first little bit, but you hit this streamline and we're having fun, man. We're having fun.
That's great. That's great. Well, Eric, I like to kind of start my podcast with I think, I don't know if my listeners get this or not, but I love the story of people's lives because we all learn from story, right? We really do. And so I would love kind of early days. I know we kind of grew up in the same hometown, not knowing each other. We had to go to California to meet, which is really funny. But so what was what was kind of one of your biggest memories as an adolescent?
Yeah. And if I get long-winded, just,
cut you off. Yeah.
But I grew up in a military family. And my parents have been married for almost 50 years. They're still married. They're still in Birmingham. So phenomenal family. My dad was in the Army, so was born overseas. We grew up all over the world and moved to Birmingham when I was 12. So much of my adolescence was spent Belgium, Germany, Washington, D.C., California, Atlanta. So traveled a bunch. And probably some of the fondest memories of my life were when we lived in Belgium. I was 6 to 9 years old. It was a fun season for our family. We traveled all the time. I got to see a ton of Europe. Of course, when you're a kid, you don't have any appreciation for the Mona Lisa or, the White Cliffs of Dover or any of those sorts of fun things. But that was formative for me to learn how to appreciate other cultures and to kind of be outside of my bubble, juxtaposed against friends that I grew up with in Birmingham that were born and raised in the same house, had never been on an airplane, so those are super fond memories. I remember Dad eating breakfast with us, putting us on the bus, and he worked a NATO job, which, NATO Europeans run a different lifestyle. I saw a joke the other day where it's like the European says their vacation response is, hey, going on vacation, I'll be gone all summer, I'll email you in September. And the American's vacation responder is, I'm taking 2 days to get my kidney taken out. You can reach me by text. I was like, that is so true. So my dad worked a NATO job, so we had a really cool pace of life. And he'd put us on the bus. He'd be home when we got home from school. He coached our sports teams. It was a really cool family time. So those are super fond memories.
Oh, wow. So that you are making much more sense now, Eric. I did not know that you lived in Europe as a kid.
Yeah, I spent about 4 years there in my adolescence, for sure.
What is the native language in Belgium?
It's Flemish in some areas and then French in others.
Okay.
And I don't speak either. And I took German in high school, and that was a while ago. I don't remember that either. I barely can speak English.
Right, there you go. Okay, huh? So what? Yeah, and you grew up in a Christian home, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say is one of the things that really influenced you growing up, that really defined masculinity, success, what it looks like to be a man as a boy that is being shaped as a man? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure we'll get into this later with what I'm doing with BraveCo, but you only know what you know, right?
Yep.
And so you grow up, and then when you get older, you realize what you have or what you don't have. And I think my story's abnormal, sadly, in that two loving parents that were committed to one another, committed to us. So I have still a phenomenal, they're both still living and super involved. And so obviously, in terms of masculinity, my dad was a massive influence. He was not a Christian growing up. He met the Lord in his 30s, and he led his dad, my grandfather, to the Lord essentially in the last years of my grandfather's life.
Yeah.
And so I was led to the Lord in my adolescence. I grew up in church. And so I think just even watching that generational impact of the decisions my dad made.
Yeah.
My dad always told me he had a Grandpa Bob, my grandpa, was a great grandpa, but a terrible dad. And, he told me stories and things, and just to see who my grandpa became after meeting the Lord, who my dad was, and then how that set me up and my family up, and the trajectory it put it on. So, of course, growing up military, playing sports, masculinity was very modeled to me. From an early age. I remember my dad teaching me how to use a saw and a hammer.
Oh yeah.
I was 4 years old. It was a Christmas present. I got a little toolbox, and I had an affinity to that anyway. And I do remodel, and the office I'm sitting in, I built on my own house. And so it's interesting to see the early influences, and of course, dad was a major influence growing up. And then later on in college, I got connected with some different mentors. I don't know if you want me to go into that at all, but there were other men that came along that I recognized, oh, you've got this piece that I need, or you've got this piece that I need, that I actually sought out to help make me more of a well-rounded man.
And what did you see in those men? Was it business related? Was it ministry related? What was specific about those men that made you want to go search that out?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we all, to some extent, see our dads, those that have dads that are present or involved. As a kid, you kind of view dad as Superman, right? And then you start, like, the joke is the smartest you ever get is when you're 18, because that's when you think you know everything, right? It's like 18-year-olds know everything. And I think that was probably the journey of my independence, of figuring out who I was and what I enjoyed and what I was good at, what I was not good at. And so the pull to other men and men of influence in my life, I think, was in the areas that I wanted to build into myself. So, for instance, there's a man you would know. He's in Birmingham, very successful businessman, very beautiful family, beautiful marriage. And although my dad hollered all those things too, I'm like, I want to know your story. How did you build it your way? And so I was always very inquisitive. And I was never afraid to go, hey, can I buy you lunch? I have questions for you. And so I probably have, I don't know, a handful, 5 or 8 men that are ahead of me that I call for different things. I was on the phone with my father-in-law yesterday about a real estate thing. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And another friend's a mortgage broker. And hey, I'm considering this. And how, so I have these experts that I go to.
It's interesting, Eric. I mean, just kind of pause real quick. It seemed like the well-roundedness of their life made what they did stand out. Like, imagine your father-in-law, there was something that he valued his family as well as in business, and therefore real estate. Anyway, was there a obviously, was there more beyond just their skill and ability? Was there more to these men that you looked up to other than just what they were good at?
I mean, I think a tree is recognized by its fruit, right?
Yeah.
So I always look for, well, it's not easy. It's not hard to find people
Mhm.
that you're attracted to in that regard.
Yeah.
Because there's usually something in you that's propelling you, like, oh, I'm interested. I want to know, how
Yeah.
did they do that? Why did they do that? How did they get there? And
Mhm.
I'm a believer in, like, I'd rather learn from their mistakes than go make them my own. Like
Right.
I think
Yeah.
there's a certain sense of humility connected to that. Like, I don't have to be a self-made man. I don't have to go pave my own way. I'd rather learn from other people and partner with other people. And probably, if that were in its negative form, there's probably a lack of self-belief. Like, I can't do this without help, and so I need help. And so
Mhm.
there's probably a negative to that coin as well. But I was always a believer of, jack of all trade, master of
Yeah.
none kind of guy. Like, I love to learn about a lot, and
Mhm.
I'd rather learn it myself and spend the money buying the tool
Yeah.
than paying somebody else to do it and then having to pay them again down the road. So, and
Huh.
I kind of went that way with most areas of my life. It's like, oh, I actually just want to dive in and learn this for myself too. So,
Yeah, which probably what made you so great at J Trench, right? Being the jack of all trades.
ministry, I've spent a lot of time in ministry. And in ministry, there's usually never enough time, money, or people. And
Yep.
so you have to, and I think business is like that too. But in ministries usually want an excellent product and don't have the resources to make it work.
Yeah.
So you have to get creative and efficient and effective with what you do have. So yeah, JH was very much that way of, how do you accomplish an excellent service or product.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember the show MacGyver. You're a little bit younger than me, but MacGyver's the guy who could, like,
Right.
break out of a bank safe with a ping pong ball and a paperclip. It's like, how do we use these things to get that door open? And necessity breeds invention in that regard. So
Yeah. And so you, knowing a little bit of your story, you were a civil engineer, right? From Auburn.
mechanical, yeah. Went to
Mechanical
Auburn
engineer.
University, mechanical engineering. I actually started out in Air Force ROTC.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
my dad said, if you're going military, go Air Force. They treat their people better than the Army. And so I did that. Long story short, I wanted to be a pilot. I was too tall. My eyesight was bad. It
Uh,
just wasn't going to work.
mhm.
So I transitioned out of electrical engineering to be the pilot, to do mechanical, and finished up at Auburn doing that. And
Mhm.
that's how I got involved with JH. And that's how we met,
Right.
was out
But
there.
was that mindset that jack of all trades, is that what attracts you to do that degree? Or is it just kind of default of like,
Yeah, I was always good at math, science. I
mhm,
never loved writing,
mhm,
comprehension, like that side of the brain, whichever one it is. I
mhm.
was always taking things apart, RC cars, and
Yeah.
taking out the motors and how do the gears work. It's just how my brain works.
Right.
And I did mechanical engineering because it was the most broad, right? So,
Yeah.
it wasn't building construction or building science. It was this broad thing. And
Mhm.
so most often people meet me, and if they find out I'm an engineer, they're like, "Oh, you don't seem like an engineer."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, I was never the guy that loved to sit in a cubicle, stereotypically speaking, sit in a cubicle and just do formulas all day. I wanted to be out in the field and project managing and problem solving, and that's the part of it that I enjoy."
Yeah. So, because I mean, from what, to give my audience a little cliff notes of your story. I mean, most college summers, you was out JH Ranch, ministry out in California, river guiding, ropes, doing different things. And then you got your degree and didn't go back to JH, and you went into business. And help me, yeah, I love this part of your story a little bit, and the
Yeah.
revelation of why you got back into ministry, especially at JH. And so share a little bit of that.
Yeah, so out of college, took an engineering job, was making way more money than a
Yeah.
20-year-old should be. Um, I had a bunch of debt from school, so I paid that off really quickly. And I was working as a project engineer in Aruba. There was an oil refinery
Oh,
there.
so sorry,
Yeah, it
Eric.
was a tough one. And but honestly was super empty inside. I
Yeah.
was making a bunch of money, but I was also working a ton. I was working 7 days a week. We were on a turnaround, which is basically you shut down a portion of the plant to repair it. But every day the plant's down, they're losing millions of dollars. So you're just working around the clock. So I think I got there, and within a week we went on turnaround, and I was working 7 days a week for almost a month.
Wow.
And you're working 16-hour days, 15-hour days. And so I remember having this moment, like I'm living at a resort, company car, company cell phone, all expenses paid, no federal income tax because I'm domiciled outside of the US.
Yeah.
Making overtime, time and a half, double time, engineer salary. Like I was making a bunch of money. I was just miserable. And I remember going like, oh, what I want to do next is go move to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. That's where the big money is in oil and gas in where I was. And, I was like, I'll make a bunch of money. I'll move back to Alabama. I'll marry a pretty girl. I'll start a business. Everything will be great. Right. And I just had this, overwhelming sense of emptiness with all of that. And I'm not usually cavalier. I'm fairly calculated, and but I within a week had left that job and just told my boss. I exited well, but just said, hey, I've got to go do this. So I went back to work at JH Ranch full time because I wanted to feel connected to purpose. I wanted to know that what I did, of course, took a drastic pay cut, but I was alive. And I felt like what I was doing was having impact on the earth. And, and of course thought that would be a year or two. And that turned into almost a 13-year career. 13 years involvement. So it was, 8 or 9 years of full-time staff. So.
Yeah. I mean, I joke, about the idea of living in Aruba, that most guys on paper would go make a bunch of money, live in Aruba, live on a resort, all expenses paid. But like you said, the idea of it is not that great. I mean, in reality, it's not that great. That many of us men, we do look at the idea of something and think that's what we want. When we put a plan together, this is what I want, but really deep down, what is it I want? And just go into more of really what you found working at JH. And that transition, not making near as much money, working probably just as hard, but what was the difference?
No, and not on your exact point, but a little side point is I think we have to get good at enjoying the journey. And I think as men specifically, we tend to go, oh, when this happens, I will feel. Or, for me, the dream was always $1 million home, lake house, the boat, the fancy truck,
right?
Like the dream, right? The American dream. And, you start to experience some of those things. Like I remember not buyer's remorse, but like, oh, you want that nice thing. And like, you get an Apple Watch and you put it on. I remember somebody gave me an Apple Watch and I'd wanted one for a while and I got it and I wore it for a week. I'm like, I hate this. Nothing against Apple. I just didn't like the constant buzz and, so I think we can experience things that way. It's like we idealize it, right? We go, oh, well, of course, living in Aruba, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. But I think it was in my 30s. I turned 39 this summer. It was in my late 20s, early 30s that I started to really practice being present where I was, present with my wife, present with my kids, present in my journey, present in my business. And I think that to me is a key to happiness, a key to success is, we have to have dreams, we have to have plans, but I have to enjoy the journey. Otherwise, I'm just stressed the whole time because I'm never enough. Because I either didn't make enough money, I didn't reach my goal fast enough, I did dot. And if you keep pushing those dreams out and you never learn to enjoy the process, then you're missing the whole point. So
there's some, I lived a lot of my life, especially my 20s, that arrival mindset. Like you said, once I get here, I'll be happy, successful, or whatever. and it's just, it's not sustainable. It created anxiety. The fruit was anxiety, really, at the end of the day. And we all know those men that the difference who are constantly anxious, constantly trying to impress, constantly trying to move towards something versus those who are 2 feet where they are.
Yeah.
And are present, authentic, real people.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful thing. And I just love that what you said that, and I hope that encourages my audience to learn how to do that. So yeah, Eric, I guess I just want to maybe open up the floor to you, how you really learned how to do that and what life experiences really taught you that.
Yeah. Well, this journey of mine I'm about to share, which actually created a bunch of anxiety in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to just share kind of my navigation out of that. But I was working at JH, had met my wife, married, pregnant with our first child. And so this was summer of 2013. So, and our first daughter, Judah, was born at 24 weeks gestation. Were you there? Were you there that summer?
I was. Mm-hmm.
And, it's one of those, wake up, my wife's not feeling great, not sure what's going on. And 12 hours later, we're in the hospital. And I remember the doctor going, hey, your baby's going to come out. It's going to be about this big. Do you want to intubate? And you're like, those aren't the questions you dream about when you're becoming a first-time dad. You're dreaming about cutting the cigar and the umbilical cord, all this sort of stuff. And, we got thrust into, one of the most painful journeys of our life.
Mm-hmm.
The long story short was she lived for 43 days in the NICU. We spent half of it in Oregon, half of it in Alabama. She just wasn't formed enough. We don't know what happened. We suspect that my wife's, whatever you call it, womb basically started leaking and got infected, and the body said, hey, eject. So Judah was born early, and her brain wasn't formed, her intestines weren't formed, like it was just too early. But I didn't know how to process pain. I didn't know how to grieve. I really didn't know how to have emotions. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of us do, when we don't know how to process pain, we try to medicate. And thankfully, I didn't go to drugs or pornography or sleeping around or overeating or whatever. My vice was work. Yeah. So the way to not think about pain is to just stay busy.
Right.
And so I just worked. And you hear people say like, oh, I worked myself to death, or like I literally was. I not only was working and spending time, but then emotionally, mentally was cued on all the time because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to process it. Like I would come home from work, my wife would be in the nursery going through the baby clothes and crying. And I was running as far away from that as possible, shutting it down, numbing out, binge watching The Office to laugh, like to just escape. And long story short, my wife saw it, but I was just going down this slope. My body was starting to, my health was a wreck. I didn't know it at the time. I was depressed. The things I used to love doing, like whitewater rafting, I couldn't even, I would cry thinking, I just can't go do it. And I mean, how busy the summer is.
Yeah.
But I put on a great face, and you just show up and you work and you work. So my wife eventually dragged me away from there. We were transitioning away anyway, but I was planning to go do real estate development and start some things. And we decided to just take a little time away as a family. And we went and got plugged into a kind of a ministry school. Call it a sabbatical if you want, but we just took a season to break. And the year was okay, but I had my first full-blown panic attack basically the last day of the first year of that school.
Wow.
And sweating, sense of impending doom, call 911, and at the time I'm 33 years old, something like that. And it kicked off a season of horrendous mental health, emotional, couldn't sleep, was having all sorts of weird allergies and body things. It was essentially, I eventually had this epiphany like, oh, I'm depressed. It's like, I'm usually pretty smart, but for some reason I didn't see it for a year and a half, but I was in full blown depression. I eventually went and saw a counselor, and, the counselor said, yeah, you've got post-traumatic stress from never dealing with the death of your daughter. And you're going to have to learn how to grieve. Well, in some sense, it was freeing, because I'm like, oh, when you're falling, you like don't know where the bottom is. You're like, how far down are we going down this hole? That day was like, I hit the bottom, but then you're at the bottom of this hole and you're like, how do I get out? that started a 2 or 3 year journey of getting my life back in order, dealing, the only way through grief is through grief. Like there's no shortcut to grief. So, actually processing the emotions, and, like, remember the counselor was like, have you ever written a letter to your daughter? I'm like, I'm just bawling like, no. And he's like, you got to actually touch those emotions. And I actually had to go through the fact, like, I'm never going to get to see you twirl in your dress. I'm never going to get to walk you down the aisle. I'm never going to, I actually had to face those things and deal with them. Had to get my health in order. I had to get on a crazy diet because my adrenal system was like, stress on your body, anxiety. I mean, it's a destructive force. And I went, 3 years, honestly, just letting that thing just eat me away. So I know anxiety well. It was too close of a friend for too long. But, through a lot of through community, through my faith, through hard work, through exercise, through lots of different things, have built a system, a lifestyle, not around not experiencing pain, but learning how to process emotion and process pain and do it healthfully, and ask for help when I need help, and know the things I'm good at and not, and learn how to enjoy the journey. And so, sorry, I know that was a lot, but that's the abridged version of, what our last decade has been. So,
yeah. Do you feel like it's made you more human?
Well,
or relatable?
It's an interesting question. I think before, I call it my crash, but I think before my crash, I would have considered myself competent, confident, like wouldn't be afraid to speak in front of people. The reality was I was scared to death inside, but I had this bravado. I had this, like, I had this self-reliance, right? Like if I study hard enough, if I work hard enough, I don't know if you follow personality stuff at all, but I'm a perfectionist person. You know that about me. And I walk into a room and I don't see the 99 things that are great. I see the one that's broken.
Right.
And that's why I'm good at my job, is I actually can help people find the things that aren't working and create efficient ways to solve it. But the problem with that is you're never happy, right? Like you come across as pessimistic. And so I think for me, when my whole world came crashing down, I actually had to face the reality of what was really in there, that I was actually scared to death. There was actually anxiety in there. I had just never stressed the system enough. Well, the system got stressed when our daughter died, and then the true things came out, and then I actually had to deal with the insecurity that I had. And so, yeah, I think now, I mean, often my mental thought process is, Eric, you're doing a great job. You gave it your best shot. Those sorts of, I have to coach myself almost into, you didn't get the 100 things done today you wanted. You got 3. Right? You got 3 things done today. Tomorrow, the list is just as long. What 3 things are we going to get done tomorrow? And I've learned a much better rhythm, and feel like I'm so much more present with my wife. I mean, our marriage is phenomenal. It was rough there for a couple years, not because we were struggling with should we be together, but I mean, I was a mess. And there's no connection, there's no intimacy, there's no that when you're going through something like that. So yeah, building building a life that's sustainable, that is realistic, that's human, that you can enjoy, setting realistic goals, celebrating your goals, celebrating your misses for trying, I feel like in my late 30s, I'm actually just now entering into like, okay, I know who I am, finally, good, bad, and ugly. And I'm going to emphasize my strengths and not get overly concerned about the things I'm not good at. And try to move forward.
Yeah, Eric, I got a couple questions that are kind of off of that. Well, one, just the understanding of what pain is and how to recognize it. Like I said, the arrival mindset for me, pain, like I didn't want pain because it showed I wasn't there. I hadn't made it.
Yeah.
And learning then to embrace the pain and learn from it. Yeah. So how was pain reshaped, and how do you deal with actual like struggle, pain, hardship, failure now in your life compared to what you used to?
Well, I think everyone has pain.
Yeah.
Like either physical pain in your body, like I'm getting older. I can't go, I know we both love golf. I can't go just walk 18 holes anymore. Like I got to go warm up. Yeah. And I know like some people are going to listen to this, be like, you're so young. I'm like, I know, I'm still, right? Like, so we all have pain, pain we carry from our childhood, pain in relationships, misunderstandings. So to me, pain is about like, pain is your body's way of going, hey, something's wrong. It's like the check engine light that comes on in the car.
Yeah.
What we often do is the light comes on and we don't go, oh, here's an indication that something's wrong. Let's go fix it. Let's figure it out. We tend to go, shoot, my transmission's probably slipping. That's probably going to cost $3,000. I don't want to go to the transmission guy because I don't want to hear bad news. And so we put a sticky note over the check engine light.
It's a great analogy.
Maybe if I don't know that the light's on, then maybe I'm not going to have to deal with the pain. Well, as we all know, that transmission's not going to get better on its own. And it's actually going to cause more damage.
Yeah.
So, another now, and I actually coach a lot of people, counsel a lot of people through the journey of depression, pain, anxiety. Not because I'm an expert from study, but I'm an expert from doing it. Like I did it, I lived it. And I feel like I have the ability to talk because I'm like, I did it and I made it through and I'm stronger for it. And so to me, pain is all about like admitting or acknowledging that you're having pain. And then it would be as crazy as like, we've all had those moments like you're cutting an onion and you cut your finger. And we tend to do this, right? We tend to be like, you hold it to stop the bleeding, but then you're like, do I want to look or not? It's like, if I let go, this thing's going to gush, it's like, but we do that. We have these painful pain against my dad or whatever. And we're like, I don't want to look at it because that's going to suck. That's what I did is like, I don't want to look at this pain of my daughter because it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But then it just festers and it gets infected. And then you have to cut fingers off because it and that's what was happening in my life. So, pain to me is so like now I run at pain. Like when I experience pain in my life, I run at it. Where is this coming from? Why is it happening? What power do I have in it? Like, if there's a relationship issue that's going on and I'm feeling anxiety because of a conversation, I go like, why am I experiencing pain? Well, I'm experiencing pain because I'm afraid they misunderstood me. And if they misunderstood me, then maybe they won't like me. And if they won't like me, then, and you go down these paths and I'm like, then you have to actually learn how to like identify what it is and then identify what you need. Yeah. And so to me, pain is that check engine light. And then the process of sustainability is actually learning the tool set to actually deal with the things in your life, finding the transmission guy, who's the expert in this field. And kind of back to what we were saying earlier is I've always had a desire to go, I'm not an expert at this. Who can help me with that? So.
Yeah. And if you felt like you found that in your community, I mean, has that been the benefit? Like, is that what you have found? Um, I guess now, yeah, have you found more value in a community where you are talking about painful things, talking about life, and not
Yeah.
just working your way, to escape?
Yeah. I think the key is vulnerability. And
Mhm.
so whether that's with a spouse or a friend or a community, we have a phenomenal community here. Um, we've got 6 or 8 couple friends with kids in the same age. We're doing life together.
Yeah.
We're on the same soccer team. The kids go to the same school. We're at the same church.
Yeah.
We have a dinner night once a month. We all gather and get babysit. Like, we're intentionally building that, and we're real with each other.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm struggling with this, or what do you think about that? Or we've got this life decision, and what do you guys think? And so to me, vulnerability is key, and it's essentially me going like, I don't want to have all the answers, because then it's all dependent upon me.
Yeah.
I actually need Cartwright, because Cartwright's better at this than I am, and so let me pull on Cartwright's strength. But then I get to be strong for Cartwright when he needs.
Mhm.
Like, you've got access to me, and I've got 12 years of marriage experience. You've got 6 weeks.
Yeah.
There's going to be things that you could pull on me from, because I've done it wrong. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
I can tell you that doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
Well, here's some things that we've done that have really been helpful. So, yeah, community, obviously, think faith is a massive, is huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, and vulnerability for sure.
Vulnerability. Yeah. Finding that group where you feel safe to actually communicate that stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And vulnerability is tricky, right? Because you sometimes you're vulnerable with the wrong person, and then you get hit for it. It's like actually finding the trustworthy people that you can be vulnerable with, that will love you in your low moments, that won't cancel you. I mean, gosh, right now, culture, you have to be perfect. Like, there's no such thing as human anymore, right? Like, if you have any flaw, done, you're canceled. There's no like, hey, wait a minute, like, that thing you did 20 years ago, you're probably a different person, and yeah, that's painful, that was wrong, but what are you doing for restitution now? And so, yeah, it's an interesting time we're living in.
It is. You're wrong because of my perception of you.
Yeah.
It may not be reality, but that's what I think you are. So that's what you are. All right. So another thing I wanted to kind of off what you said, because I know you are still like a hard worker. You still value work in your life. So how has work been kind of reshaped, redefined in your life?
Yeah, it's a balance I've had to learn with my wife. A lot of it is me learning my rhythms and what I need. So I'm an introvert. I can be in front of people. I can lead. I can speak. I can teach.
Yeah.
I can manage. But the way that I refuel, the way I recharge, is I need my time. Well, in my season where I was overworking, I was not only running from pain, I was also not doing anything for me. I was not getting any free time. I was not getting any vacation. Like, I was just working. And so I've had to build a better rhythm of, playing golf. Like, I got to play golf once a month. And I wish I could play 3 times a week, but life and business and 3 kids, and we're just not in that season right now. But I've learned myself better. So I know if I'm getting out of whack. My wife obviously knows.
Yeah.
She'll go, "Hey babe, do you need to go hit golf balls this afternoon?" Like, have I been a jerk? You might want to go hit some golf balls. So I found a couple hobbies over COVID. I got really into Formula One.
Oh yeah.
I love watching the races, and it's something I can track and follow. For me, it's a way that I decompress, and I think having those rhythms, I have rhythms daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. We do a yearly big family trip. We got one coming up this summer. Coming to Birmingham, we should go play golf. We'll come visit family. My wife and I try to get away twice a year for a long weekend to reconnect and plan calendar for the year and revision about what we're trying to build into and what we're saving money for. And so I have to manage it But there's also time, like this week is a busy week. We're with BraveCo. We're doing basically an online conference this week. And so like I'm gone every night, you know, through dinner time, bedtime, kid time. And it's just something my wife and I agreed to, like, hey, this week's going to be busy, but I counteract it by things that I give up. So something that's really helped me, and this isn't every personality, but my personality is I want to do everything 100% all the time. So in high school, college, this just shows you maybe why I had an emotional breakdown. But if I got a 92 on a test, it wasn't good enough, because good enough was 100. So it's a poor mentality. But that's where I was. And so I have to go, oh, me being successful, like I'm busy enough now, like I'm going to disappoint people. I'm going to miss meetings. I had to reschedule a meeting today and it was my fault. Hey, I'm so sorry. I accidentally double booked. And I just have to learn not to go into shame about that. And I just missed it, but it's actually because I was being a present dad. You know, like, and I just have to learn, like, oh, doing 80% at 30 things is better than doing 100% at 2 things. I actually grow faster. I get more accomplished. I have more influence. So I'm in a transition, and even in my own life, my own leadership of, you know, I've gone through that narrowing of like, I've gotten really good at a certain skill set, and now my opportunities are increasing, and I'm having to learn how to delegate. I'm having to learn how to trust. I'm having to learn how to manage multiple things. And I got multiple worlds going, different things. So it's, you know, you learn by doing, right? Like you just gotta jump out there and do it. So
yeah, that's great, Eric. Man, there's a lot I could take that through, but I'm really curious about this question. So yeah, what would you tell your 25-year-old self from what you know now?
Yeah, don't be so afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning that, right? But a good friend of mine, he's actually the founder, the president of BraveCo, is a good friend of mine, Jason Dallaton. He and I are very opposite personalities. And he's a ready, shoot, aim kind of guy.
Right.
And it's like, you know, like hop in the canoe and we'll figure out what we need when we get there. And I'm the ultra planner. I'm an engineer, right? I had a professor in college that you either got 100 or 0 on the test. It was like, it was either all or nothing. And his point, I think it was a wrong point, but his point was, you can't, like, if you design a bridge, you can't, if you get an 80% on that bridge, people die.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you have, like, it has to be over engineered and with tolerance. And so I'm incredibly analytical, and like this is how crazy my brain is, but like I pull into Target and I'm like, what should I back the car in so that my door is closer? Like if I come out and it's raining, I can get into the car fast. Like just that. It's exhausting, honestly.
Efficiency. That's what it is, right?
And but to me, the maturity has been, and I'm forgetting your question, but maturity for me has been, there's a difference between efficient and effective. I can be incredibly efficient, but completely miss the mark.
Yeah.
And so I'm focusing more on effectiveness, and effectiveness requires different risk tolerance. It requires the ability to be wrong. And so for me, taking, that 25-year-old self is I think most of my life I tried not to fail. And I think I've missed out on, not in a regretful way, but I've missed out on a lot of opportunity because I was afraid of failing. And I read somebody, like a thing that families do. We often at dinner with the kids do, what's your high and low of the day? You know, like what was your high point? What was your low point? Some of it, it's my way of teaching my kids emotional awareness.
Yeah.
You know, so like I didn't do that growing up. So you know, it's like, what were you excited about? Okay, great. What was sad? And then we get to, oh, I'm so sorry. And so we're actually teaching our kids how to have emotion and how to process it and how to deal with pain, and so they don't do what I did. But I heard a story of a dad that would dinner time was celebrating your failures for the day. What did you try and fail at?
Wow.
Your goal was to encourage risk, encourage learning, encourage. So the family would actually go, well, I tried out for choir today and I didn't get selected. It'd be like, that's so amazing. We're so proud of you for your bravery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm doing that in my own life right now, is stepping into places that scare me. It's like that running at pain thing. It's like, oh, if this scares me, there's probably something in it for me. There's probably something to learn. You know, you've heard this statement before, but the dogs of doom stand in the ways of your destiny. The things that scare you are typically invitations to overcome. So whether it be real estate investing, or I launched my own business a couple of years ago, and you know, those sorts of things, I'm trying to, in the second half of my life, go, I'm not going to run from fear, or run from fear of failure, and I'm going to actually learn more from failing. And you iterate faster. And that's what I've learned from my friend Jason, is like, we'll launch something, we'll build something, and it'll break, and it drives me crazy. But I'm like, but we learned a bunch, and we'll probably relaunch it again and fix the broken things faster than I would have launched the perfect product, because you can't have a perfect product without testing it. So I'm growing a ton in that regard.
Absolutely. That's really good. That's interesting. Oh, I had a thought in there, Eric, and I lost it. It was so good though. Oh man, but that was, I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah. It's become a constant theme, I feel like, in a lot of my interviews, is it's like the best model for success is falling forward.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
and it's an easy thing to read, right? Like, you read in the books, you're like, yeah, that's great. And learn how to fail forward. And you're like, but when you're doing it, like when you fall off your bike, it still hurts.
Yep.
Like, you still skin your knee, but you got to learn how to, like, not go into those shame cycles, not like, see, I knew it was going to happen. Like, you actually have to get good at it. And all the people that are teaching that are making money selling books at that, the way they learned was doing it. So I don't like, I think some things in life are just built that way. Like, you can't learn the lesson without doing it yourself.
Yeah, this is the thought I had, Eric, because this is what I think of someone like you, your personality, your skill set. You know, I think you would have been a great career guy, like model employee going up the ranks. But here, God puts you in a place where, like, you're doing all these different things and you're learning on the fly. So, I mean, is there, like, do you look back and you're thankful for everything? Or is there, like, man, what would have it looked a lot different? Is there a way you look at your past right now?
I think regret is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because I can't change it.
Yep.
The only thing I can change is my future. So I think looking back from an analysis standpoint for learning is great, but if I dwell on it too much, it's just a waste of time. And I'm a firm believer that, like, we're a sum total of all the little choices we've made.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I look at what I'm doing now, I have an engineering degree. I've traveled the world. I've been in leadership my whole life. I've spent a ton of time in nonprofit. I've helped a bunch of people. But when I look at that skill set, like, it's actually a really unique gifting that I feel like I've carved out, the Lord has led me in, that's actually giving me audience to do the things that I'm doing today. And so even the painful things in my life, like even going through the experience with my daughter, I would not wish that on anyone. They say that losing a child is the hardest thing you can experience. And like, I didn't have years, like, I can't imagine losing my 7-year-old, because I have 7 years of memories, and like, he has a personality. And so it was easier on us in that regard. Not that it was easy, but, you know, I still wouldn't trade that experience for the world, because I am who I am today because of it. And I have a bunch of scars, and my body still has the effects of it. And I still have to eat super clean, and, you know, I still have to manage, but I'm like, oh, I'm stronger today. I probably have more anxiety today than I did 10 years ago, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Mm,
I think having the anxiety is that warning light to go, something's off. And it's part of my journey of going, and my wife and I have a great relationship where we connect every night. I'm like, how was your day? And talk about it. And I try to empathize with her. And then I get to do the same. And so every night I feel heard, I feel known, I feel like I belong, I feel believed in.
mm-hmm.
And it's just the way that and so I'm like, oh yeah, there's probably a few decisions I've made that I regret that we probably should just not talk about. But overall, I'm like, no, I love the journey I'm on. And of course I have, like, I had a dream to be completely debt free, mortgage free by 35. Well, that's now 40. So
Yeah, there you go.
A
Yeah.
year and a half, and we're on our way. But we're like, okay, I didn't hit the target, but I had a great target. I'm just going to readjust. And I don't think that that's cheap. I think that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the whole mindset of like, just nothing is wasted. And it's really interesting. Like, I mean, Hollywood is starting to put these shows out, and there's podcasts of people who got way too successful and didn't have the character to maintain it.
Yeah.
And someone like you who really could have been on a very easy success track just because how smart and hardworking you are, but how God decided, like, no, I want the man Eric to grow and success to follow.
Yeah.
And so I just think
it's a way slower way to build. I think it's a better way to build.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we take the story, and if I had left JH rather than going to that school that gave me space, the sabbatical, that gave me space to actually have a crash and get healed and all that. If I had gone back to Birmingham, I had 3 business partners, a $250,000 line of credit. I was pursuing my real estate license. I was going to jump in. Can you imagine what my life would have been?
Yeah.
Had I not done that? Like, then I would have self-destructed, and I would have had an incredible amount of pressure.
Yeah.
Perform or deliver. Now I've got obligations and contracts, and so like what feels like a deviation in the journey, actually I think was the journey, was what was needed to be built into me. It was going to come out at some point. And so I'm like, I counsel a lot with the ministry I'm involved in. We counsel a lot, young men in addiction, men stuck in cycles. And, I'm like, better get this figured out while you're single.
Yeah.
When you're married, when you have kids, like there's a whole other host of implications if you're still dealing with some of that stuff. Not that it's still not able to be dealt with, but the gravity of those decisions, or the outcome of those things, is so much different when you have other responsibilities. So I'm grateful that I've, even at 35, I'm counseling people in this today, and they're like 21 going, man, I can't believe I'm like, I didn't learn this till I was 35. Like, you're 14 years ahead of me, So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Just so anybody out there listening, just feeling that constant pressure, anxiety, the whole idea of taking a sabbatical feels so gross to imagine to so many men that are so deep in their career, but the whole idea of like taking one step back to go 10 steps forward. And
I'm not a huge student of Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A, I mean, just look at this as a model. Chick-fil-A is probably one of the most successful restaurants in America, correct? They only operate 6 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they're following a spiritual principle of a Sabbath and all that. If you're not a believer, you don't subscribe to that. Explain to me how a business who does not operate 1/7 of the week is beating businesses that are open 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Well, there's a principle of rest and like actually taking time. And so these are the rhythms we have to build in. We have to trust that me like something I'm really working on. I'm not great at it, but something I'm working on is when I'm home, I want to be present. This thing right here that's buzzed 600 times on our podcast, I'm like, this can't, I've got 10 more years left with my son and he's out of the house. I
Yeah.
want to get this moment back tonight. So when
Yeah.
he's like, dad, I'm like, hold on, son. And like, you know,
Right.
man, it's
Wow.
challenging. It's challenging to stay present. And I mean, why else would I be working? Right. Like if you
Yeah.
ask me the question, hey, Eric, if you had $100 million, what would you do? Why, like, wow. I wouldn't be busting my butt. I would be traveling with my kids. I would be like I would be giving them opportunities for success. I would be like,
Mhm.
of course I'd be investing but like I wouldn't have the stress of trying to make it happen. Like, so that's my whole point is
Right.
like when I leave this earth, I want to be known as a good dad, a good husband.
Mhm.
I want my kids to have better opportunity than I did. Like I think any person listening to this would feel the same way.
Mhm.
So it's how do we actually do that? How do we build
Right.
that?
Which is a
Like,
great little practical thing to end on right there. It's just like, why are we working? You know, who are you doing it for? Right?
yeah,
For what purpose? For what end? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
I
I think we can
remember
all do that.
just a short anecdote. I remember I was probably 16 years old. I had a truck and my alternator went out on the truck.
Mhm.
And we had to go to the repair shop and, you know, it was $300 or $400 to get it repaired. And I remember feeling so bad about that because my parents paid for it. And I remember going, Mom and Dad, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry for the expense. And of course I didn't do it. It's the truck wore out. And my mom said to me, she's like, honey, that's why we work. Like, that's why we have money to pay for stuff.
Mhm.
So when it happens, we can pay for it. And it's true. Like, you know, we work hard to to ultimately money gives you choices, right?
Right.
You get to choose how you use it, what you do with it. And yeah, so
That's good. Well, yeah, Eric, I just want to give a plug for what you're doing, and yeah, just from what my audience needs to know about BraveCo and anything like that. So
yeah, so BraveCo is a men's ministry. So I'm acting CEO for them. I do business consulting on the side. But BraveCo is really a lot of what we've talked about today is helping men find freedom from addiction, helping redefine true masculinity. We believe that fatherlessness is the cause of most of the major issues that we're experiencing in culture. You look at men that are incarcerated, people that are incarcerated, largely absent father. You look at drug abuse, like either dads that weren't present, dads that they never knew, dads that were abusive. So we have a saying that says, if you heal a father, you heal a family, and if you heal a family, you can heal the nation. And
wow.
so our whole goal is to empower men, help men get well. We're not assuming every man's broken, but every man is on a journey. And we believe in connection. So we get men all over the world connected to one another. We have a 12-month program that we take men through. It's a great resource. It's called BraveCo, braveco.org. It's Christian-based, obviously, but it's when I thought I was going to start my business and jump into the secular world, for some reason, I keep getting connected to nonprofit. I think it's that drive to feel like what I'm doing has some sort of purpose and value. So it's been a fun season over there. We're almost a year in now. And so it's super fun to see what's going on there. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Eric. Yeah. I mean, where's the best place to find you?
braveco.org. If they want to know about BraveCo, my consulting business is nickoliconsulting.com.
Yeah. And you do a free call, right? Like a consultation or something.
Yeah, and would love to make myself available to your viewers. If there's anybody that was impacted by my story or has questions about anxiety or burnout or any of that, I'd love to connect with any of those people as well. That's one of those things when you weaponize your story, when my story didn't happen to me, but I actually get to use it to have good. If I can help somebody not go through what I went through, that makes me feel good, because then it makes it feel purposeful. So
Yeah. Well, Eric, I appreciate you coming on. It's been fun just hearing more of your stories and even details I didn't know. So thank you for coming.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. This was fun, and I'll be there in the summer. We should go play golf.
Hey, I'm down.
Old time's sake.
I'm down. Absolutely. Thanks, Eric.
All right, man. Bless you.